So welcome, Doug Pagitt Radio. Now from Seattle, where it has happened, and it's a little later in the day. For those of you who are used to listening at 10 a.m. in the morning, it's not. It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time, or as they say out here on the Pacific Coast, 2 in the afternoon. And I'm joined by Dwight Friesen. Hi, Dwight.
Hey, good to see you, Doug.
Dwight.
Or hear you.
Joined by, we can see one another too. Joined by Tara and Nathaniel. And Tara is a musician, and she's going to share with us. Nathaniel, are you a musician too? Are you going to be sharing with us?
I'll
today?
be singing.
You're going to be singing.
Yes.
Great. Love it. And Tobin Wilson. Tobin is a pastor here, and Toby and I have known each other for a lot of years and have done things together when we were young men with life and a hope and a future in front of us.
That's right.
And now we'll sit here today and talk about it.
We'll reminisce and further define things for those that got nervous hearing that.
That's right. Well, the kinds of stories of men who used to have meaning in their lives. But the Seattle School is a terrific place. It used to be called Mars Hill Graduate School, for those who are used to that. And I have found myself, Dwight, and I know that you are deeply embroiled in this conversation of the Seattle School, as a faculty member here, the most important theologian on staff, on faculty. Well, is that true?
It's something like that, yeah.
In the area,
I'm the practical theologian.
In the area of practical theology. And it used to be called Mars Hill, and now it's the Seattle School.
Yeah,
Do you spend half of your time when you're talking with someone explaining that to them, that it is that same school?
Yeah,
but now
we have tried to act as though we've always been the Seattle School in some respects. It just goes a little bit easier. But it's been a really important shift for us. And it's not just because of the distinction between Mars Hill Church here with Driscoll and Mars Hill Church in Grand Rapids where Bell used to be. But for us, it's actually been a quest to locate ourselves, to actually see ourselves not just connected to the Areopagus, which is in Greece and where Mars Hill gets its name, but to actually see ourselves in Seattle, for Seattle, sort of by Seattle. And that's a new thing for us. And so in some ways I feel like there's a coming of age and a growing up of our institution that the name reflects. So it actually feels really, really good. And there have been organizations in town that we have wanted to partner with and where we've wanted to collaborate, and they have been unwilling to do so, even though they know that we weren't one of these other churches. Because of the name association, they were concerned that their constituents would confuse us with the church.
So yeah, for those who don't know, there's a church here that borrows the same name.
Yeah.
Which is intriguing to me, how
we both started the same summer.
Yeah, start the same summer and pick the same obscure Bible passage.
Yep, Acts 17.
And name your religious institution off of an obscure Bible reference.
Well, at that time in history, in the American context, like the idea that Christianity should in some way be engaged with culture was kind of emerging in a new way.
Yeah, that was fresh.
It was fresh. And that story out of Acts 17 is the story where the Apostle Paul is visiting Athens, and while he's walking the streets, he sees the temples to the unnamed gods. He sees, and he quotes poets and writers from Greek culture to sort of as sort of an entree point into communicating the gospel of Christ. And so it was that kind of ethos, that kind of idea that I think led our organizations to choose that name. Interestingly, of course, at least in Seattle, the church by that name and this particular seminary, in some ways, lived into that calling of engaging culture in very different ways. And so it's felt really appropriate as we've sort of deepened our quest to embody in our place, to actually locate our name, to redefine ourselves by this place, and not just a story of once a long time ago. So it feels important to us.
Yeah, I think it's great. And people have thought highly of Mars Hill, so if they didn't know that they changed their name to the Seattle School to broaden the scope and the perspective. Yep. This is the same place.
It is the same place.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you become new people and all, but.
Well, actually, we are. In fact, just this past weekend, we launched a brand new certificate. It's called Leadership in the New Parish. It's all about how do we actually develop our organization or our faith communities so they're actually living in place with much more intention. How do you allow your location, your neighborhood to call forth what mission looks like, what formation looks like, even your understanding of community. And so that's different. I mean, it's a different way of being. It's not assuming that we know what the gospel is and then we apply it to a place. It used to be that the old understanding of parish, for instance, the church defined the neighborhood, and the old understanding of parish.
Sure.
In the new understanding of parish, of course, the neighborhood defines the church. And so what is it? And most of our seminaries don't equip us to read well, to listen well, to submit ourselves to our neighbors. And that's what we're about here at the school. How do we come in not thinking that we have it all together, but how do we enter in as recipients to practice the art of receiving the gift that is our neighborhood, and by embodying that receptive stance to becoming, then we have a better can have a better sense as to what it is to give in ways that might be meaningful there, as opposed to some sort of a soft colonialism where we assume we know.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I went to seminary a long time ago and have a seminary degree, but even when I was at seminary, I worked at a church where being a practitioner was seen as more valuable than being academically trained.
Yeah.
So there was this little meme that would sort of run around at that time, which was, those who do, those who can't
teach.
Yeah. Hey, you've heard that
one
one before?
Those. Oh yeah,
is that true?
I think I lived that.
So how is it? And that's a big critique, right? And I was just at pastor conferences all this last week, like more than any decent person should have to tolerate. And in 4 different cities, in 2 different states, with 4 different groups and different denominations, someone in each one of those places, someone was talking about something they had to do, like get the boiler started. Like Toby had to do this week, or get the projector to work right, or figure out the internet. And people would always say, well, and there's the stuff they didn't teach in seminary,
right?
Which is the subtle critique that the stuff they teach in seminary doesn't really have any value to it. And you, as a quite culturally adept person, or
I'm
adept
not sure
person.
if I'd be willing to. Okay, I'll give you that.
I mean, at least for a Mennonite.
Take it today.
Canadian Mennonite, no less.
Canadian Mennonite. In fact, do you have identification or anything? Because I hear that people are crossing the borders undocumented.
I'm just glad I'm not in Arizona.
And it
comes out too often for me.
It can't just be the southern border, right? The Canadians must be sneaking in.
That's right. I'm not sure what North Dakota is saying these days. Anyways.
I live in a border state.
That's right, you do.
Yeah, our governors had to do the same thing. We
right.
stop Canadians and ask what they're doing here. They're looking for health care. That's what it is, because they want good hospitals.
That's right.
Canadian hospitals.
I'm tired of waiting.
Anyway, but there was this real sensibility, right, that seminaries are outdated, or that they train you for something else.
Yeah.
And in the information age, right, how does someone ever argue that what you should do if you want to learn the best stuff is come into this room that we're sitting in here in Seattle, and like in this room you're going to get the best information? Because I think you could get it in lots of other places.
If you're coming for information, you can go anywhere, because it can't be about information. There's got to be something other than that. Information is important.
Yeah.
How we think about theology, the hermeneutical structures that we use, exegetical skill sets, interpersonal training, all of that. I mean, there is information that has to be learned. But at the end of the day, I mean, in many respects, the way we think about seminary is it's in some ways it's become a product. Our modern seminaries are a result of the Industrial Revolution. We've always had education. We haven't always had schools. We haven't always had schools in the way that we have them today. One of the fundamental questions that we have to be asking.
That kind of factory model of the Industrial
Revolution. Where we pull people out of their context, where we download information into them and assume that we assume a certain kind of worker, a called person, a certain kind of skill set on the other side. And as we now live in a post-industrial age, we have to be asking ourselves more deeply, what what kind of person? Education unto what? Seminary unto what? And frankly, a lot of our seminaries are assuming, still continue to assume that the church, we have to continue the church as we have seen it, and are designed to perpetuate that. And frankly, in many cases, our current church structures actually perpetuate cultural fragmentation and fragmented lives that actually war against the kind of flourishing that we actually see in the gospel. And so what is it then to begin reimagining seminary that gets us thinking and more importantly, practicing another way of being in the world? And that's kind of what we're trying to explore here at the Seattle School. Now, we're not the only one. There's a whole bunch of schools that are exploring deeper formative practices and
really?
ways.
Like, I mean, are you just being generous?
I'm not.
Like who?
I think Claremont's doing some interesting things.
Okay.
I think what's the one in Chicago where Fitch is North?
Yeah, Northern.
I think they're doing some interesting things. Wake Forest.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think is exploring. There's a few that are really kind of pushing them. We all have to, right?
Because what I hear from most seminaries is I do running, and I mean, I should be upfront.
I am trying to be generous.
They're
too.
fine. I teach at them, and I do stuff like that at seminaries. But boy, for the most part, it feels as much like pastor accreditation programs as real dynamic life change that's happening there. It's kind of like I go here because this is where I get my union card, so that I can access the pieces of the the structure.
To be honest, this is one of the realms where the Seattle School has. We're 11 years. I don't know how old are we. We started in probably 1996, and we're just finishing our ATS accreditation this year. This year, which is a long time for a seminary to go without getting our ATS accreditation. One of the reasons why that's been a sticking point for us is because in our mission statement, we state that one of our primary goals is transformation. And from an accreditor's perspective, they want to know, how do you demonstrate that transformation has
demonstrable transformation. So
what does that look like? And we have had continuing to wrestle with what is it to be a well-formed, transformed, as opposed to malformed and just informed. What is that, and what does it look like? So I just finished teaching the certificate this weekend, and it's on a professional level, on a personal level, it's the most exciting thing I've ever been a part of, hands down. But what we've identified that as a school, for us to actually help leaders live into place, the academy can't do it on its own. And so we've entered into a deep strategic partnership with a group called the Parish Collective, which is a group of area pastors who are committed to serving and living into their place. And we've recognized there's a certain element that the academic can provide. There's a certain level of critical thinking skills, sort of study and researched life it's a necessary gift to bring to the table. But we have got to be in relationship and in partnership with people who are on the streets, sort of living it. And I've just been I feel myself being invited into life through this partnership.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
I really think it does. I've been struck by like this politics thing that's currently going on, where we're going to.
You mean this election that's coming up?
Yeah, where we elect a president, which I think is a bad idea. And I've said this on the show. Like I've been harping for a long time. I don't think presidents should run for re-election. I think presidential terms should be 4, 5, or 6 years, maybe 6 years.
6 would be good.
And they never run for re-election. And when you become the president, you should forgo your commitment to a particular political party. So I think the president should be above political parties, represent everyone, and doesn't have to run for re-election. Because this whole thing that, where one of the two guys who's bad for America is going to be our next president, that's a really bad thing.
So wait a minute, so a person would be like Democrat in their head while they're running, and then when they become, or Republican, and then once they're elected, they would surrender that?
Well, because
that would be hard to make that transition.
Well, when they run for the presidency, they know they're running for a non-partisan.
I see. So the office would be nonpartisan. You have to surrender, create some kind of liturgy or something that marks that.
You would give that up, and you would, and then your function then, and you would do things that would keep you from, I really want Barack Obama to win this election because I really don't want Mitt Romney to, and I really want Barack Obama to. But it would say keep the president from sending me emails every day asking me for $5.
Oh, exactly.
I get this too.
I mean, it's unbelievable, right? So it just drives you crazy. But there was this whole conversation that was going on one of the political talk shows about, well, how important education is, because look at guys like Barack Obama and Mitt Romney and Bill Clinton and these people. What made them, the guys they are to be able to do this is that they went to these great schools. And it kind of makes me wonder about this whole function of, because I think what happens in these education systems is that's where you meet the people who give you access because they hold power. Right? Like the fact that the Supreme Court and the two presidential candidates and the previous one were all Harvard grads is not because Harvard teaches you better things or has a better process of transformation. It's because that's the network that holds that power. So it starts moving within these networks. And it feels like the pastor schools that used to be that way, that was with a wink and a nudge, right? Like you went to these schools and you went to the Presbyterian school, you could work at Presbyterians, churches, you work at the Methodist school, you do this other thing. So is it possible that education systems are really just early kind of social networks, and it's get you into the club because then as an alumni, then you know these people. So it's not what happens in you or what you know, it's the network that it gives you. That gives you access to money and power and jobs.
You can't understand any aspect of life without thinking of the relational and social network behind it. I mean, that's going to be a part of any and all things that we do, whether that's church life, whether that's.
But you think there's something more to it? That it's not just that you're suggesting.
Well, I don't know if I'd want to say it's just that. Right in this moment, I'm not sure what else it would be.
Yeah, it could be something else.
You're just leaving it open for the possibility.
Which
is always a good thing, especially in times of election.
I mean, like when I think about, did you say that all the Supreme Court judges?
Well, not it's
or
not
just
all of them, but I think it's all but two.
I mean, to me, that is remarkable. Like,
yeah.
And what's interesting for me, like when I think of
and they're
my
all Catholics
school,
too, which is the other thing that drives me crazy.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Like when I think about this school, we don't have a denominational backing, and I always think of that as being actually a strength for us, because it allows us to orient. We're not training people to fill a specific vision of what the pastor or the pastorate or what a church should be. We can reframe that in light of sort of the kingdom of God, human flourishing, and those kinds of conversations. And so, what is it to lead both in that space? It feels like an advantage until students graduate and they need to get the job.
And they don't have the Rolodex.
And they don't have that right social network. They don't have the Rolodex. And so there's no question, we feel that pinch. And that's one of the reasons why hanging out with denominational leaders and church pastors in the area it has been so vital. But it's all those connections that we do here at the school are largely on a relational level, not on an institutional level yet. We do have we have a growing number of denominations that are actually ordaining our folks. We just saw our first student ordained at our first alum ordained at the Episcopal Church. We have students in the ELCA process, the United Methodist process, let alone a plethora of sort of evangelical free church expressions. From Mennonite to Baptist and E-Free and actually the Presbyterians have been one of the toughest ones to get into, but that's beginning to open up too. All that to say is,
hey, be careful with those Presbyterians.
You don't want to cross the table from them.
They're like jalapeno peppers. You just gotta a little taste of them is fine.
I don't like
jalapeno. Have you been called that before?
No.
Could add some zip.
We called a lot of things. I'm going to add that to the
They
list.
can give you a stomachache if you get too many of them. Well, Tara joins us here too. Tara and Nathaniel. You seem to know the people here at the Seattle School. Are you a graduate? Are you a student?
No, actually.
Are you a facilitator?
I'm not. I'm a friend of the Seattle School, though. I would consider myself a friend of the Seattle
we
School.
love the church.
And my boss actually is going here right now.
Oh.
Actually. Ryan, the pastor of Church of the Beloved, is.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Church of the Beloved.
Church of the Beloved.
That sounds like an African American church, is it?
No, it's not actually. It's a Lutheran missional plant.
Really?
We're about to become. You would know a little bit more about this.
We are in the process.
We're almost a bona fide church. We're getting close.
We're further along in the process than we were before.
Are you Lutheran in your backgrounds, the two of you?
No.
Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
No,
I'm familiar with those people. I'm from Minnesota, and that's Lutheran Central up there. What kind of Lutheran is this? Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, ELCA?
It is ELCA. It's a missional start.
Great.
And we started about 5 years ago. There was actually a prayer team from different Lutheran churches in the area that realized that they wanted to reach the younger generation and tried many different ways and were failing. So they actually started a prayer team in the idea that maybe they're not the ones that were supposed to start this out. And so they decided that they were going to plant a church. They asked Ryan to be on that board, and he got himself off that board pretty quickly because he realized that he grew up in the area they wanted to plant, and he wanted to be considered for
You want to be
leadership
part
of
of it
this
in a different
church.
way.
Yeah.
Great. And you all make your own music there, which is something fond to my heart.
We do.
Because we do the same thing in our church, and I think Like it's an essential part of being Christian in the world is that you have a song to sing. And
Yeah.
you can borrow them from other places, but if you can make your own, it seems like that's
Yeah, I think God wants to, like, is a new song.
Sings
is
a
kind
new
of like
song,
singing
yeah.
a new song.
But-
And
but you
sometimes
all
it's a
are
new
doing
old
this
song.
in a broader way than just making up your own music. You have you're inviting other people into this whole project through a Kickstarter campaign, or to help people invite people to help you pay for the construction of this.
Yeah, yes, we are.
This epic.
There's many ways
music.
to make an album, and I think that's kind of changed over the last couple of years. Kickstarter is something that's picked up in the last few years, which is a great resource, actually. It allows us to kind of put this album together, and we actually did not fund the last album that we did through Kickstarter because it didn't exist at that time. That was Hope for a Tree Cut Down, and that one we released it for free on the internet.
The title of the album was Hope for a Tree Cut Down.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? That's a great
It
phrase.
comes from Jeremiah, actually.
Really? The book of Jeremiah?
Yeah.
Huh.
And so we decided we were working on it as a fundraiser. We were going to sell it for money, but then later we just decided we wanted to give it away, and it was really fun. So it's been downloaded over 15,000 times.
And so for those who don't know what a Kickstarter is, it's where you ask people to contribute money to a goal that you've set.
Yes.
And if you reach that goal, then you get the money.
If
you
we
don't reach the goal, you don't get the money.
Exactly. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yes. Have you already reached your goal?
No, we haven't, but we're...
How much do you need? Because Dwight could have the
I
Seattle
know.
School jump in for a little bit.
We're trying to raise
short are you?
6,500
Yeah.
in 33 days, I think.
33 days.
And
$6,500 in 33
we've got
days.
until November 18th. We've
Okay.
gone 10 days, and we've made 63% of our goal, which
63%?
is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So we've got
Especially if people are giving
2,000.
$5 to the president all the time.
Exactly.
Just
I'm
flush
not
out.
sending emails out every day asking
not?
for $5
You
though,
should.
but once in a while I'll post this on Facebook. It's yeah, we have $2,365 left to go, and the way Kickstarter works is people can donate different amounts, and there's different rewards that they can get. So there's a $10 slot reward, a $25.
Like what you don't need to go through all of them, but what kind of rewards are they? Like they get an album or a t-shirt or
Albums.
a house concert or something?
House concert.
Backlog of other album, like some unreleased.
T-shirts,
albums that
stickers.
we've
Yeah.
There's one that's a date with Jerry the Pug, but I don't think anyone
I
has
think I
gone
took
for
that
that.
off.
now.
That was-
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to give you any money because I'm all out. I gave it all to the president already. But I have some books that I would be glad to give people who would make a contribution.
Well, that'd be very
So,
cool.
So anybody who listens and I'll put this on the Facebook page.
That would be beautiful.
So anybody who makes a contribution, I'll send them a little pack of books.
That's
We'll set
wonderful.
up. How much should they have to give for a pack of books? Like $10
For,
or
probably
$15?
more. I don't know.
$20. $20
$20
is easy.
Okay, so a $20
$20
contribution or more, or for every 20, I'll send you a little pack of books. So,
Okay.
I mean, I can't sell these things anyway. Nobody wants them. They're mine. I mean, nobody buys them. I
You
might
sure you
as well
don't want to
give
make
them away.
it more?
No, I've got a few. No, it's great. $20 is.
Thank you so much,
I think
Doug.
that's great.
That's great.
Okay, so you're gonna play some of the music
We are.
for us right now.
Do you want to hear one
The
of
two
those?
of you are gonna sing. Yes, and is there a story behind this? I do this a lot to musicians.
Yes.
Ask them like where the song came from, and many of them are just like, "Why do you feel the need to ruin a perfectly good song by having me talk about it ahead of time?" It's like
Yeah.
talking during sex or something. It just ruins the whole thing. But
Yeah.
It is.
This song is a lot like talking during sex, actually.
Yeah?
Like, I don't know.
So Tara has written obviously an entire other album, and has been a musician, songwriter for a long time. And we got married a little over a year ago. And again, I semi-sing, semi-musician, but this was the first song that we wrote together.
Yeah.
And so Tara had the idea and kind of a beginning of it, and just kind of invited me into that. And so this was, it is kind of our first song together. There's a little bit of,
Songs for a Mystical Supper.
songs for a mystical supper.
Yep.
I like it.
and this song is Revealed.
There we go. stars apart. Heaven and earth rejoice, for I am with you. The mystery of this union weighs on me. You must know I'm not worthy to receive you. My story, my hidden thoughts are clear as day to you. Oh, just touch my lips, and I am revealed. Only say the word, and I shall be healed. Oh, just touch my lips, and I am revealed. Only say the word, and I shall be Heaven and earth rejoice, for you are with me. My body is now a vessel for your heart. Heaven and earth rejoice, for you are with me. My life is not my own because it's yours. My God, I'd be a fool not to receive you. The very thought of how you are is dawning like the day. Oh, just touch my lips, and I am revealed. Only say the word, and I shall be healed. Oh, just touch my lips, and I am revealed. Only say the words, and I shall be
That's fabulous.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So tell us how you would imagine these songs being sung, because we're sitting in a little, classroom at the Seattle School, just 5 of us, and a stack of chairs behind you. I would imagine. I mean, you did a great job of it here, but in your mind's eye, is this for individuals, people in their cars, communities to sing? How do you?
I think it's for all. I mean, we're gonna the album is going to be very produced. So I'm hoping that the album is something that will, like we were talking earlier, Dwight, about how our last album was just kind of an accompaniment to the writing of one of your works, and I want it to be something that accompanies people daily, that just kind of helps them, you know, I really believe that music sets a tone. Like, there's certain types of music that I listen to when I'm cleaning, or when I'm, or I look for a certain type of ambient music when I'm writing, and like, so I think that it creates a space, you know. So I'm hoping to create a space that's peaceful for people. I think all of us are hoping something that's peaceful, that's welcoming, and yeah, that just opens them up to hearing from God.
When you mentioned that, I was so a couple of years ago, I was working on a writing project. Your first album was really the soundtrack for my writing, one of the key pieces, and there were like literally days and days where that was the only music I listened to.
Wow.
I had it on repeat, and I remember, like, for me, I'm still trying to, in some ways, finding myself as what it means to be an author and a writer, and it feels like a very prayerful space for me, and to have to be accompanied by the words, the music, and knowing something of your community, and in some ways, for me, it felt almost like I wasn't alone in that process. When for me, you know, often when you're creating, there can be an isolating component to it because you have to do a certain aspect of it on your own, and I was just so grateful to have you with me as I had that chance to write, and it was prayerful.
So when we come back, we're going to take a little break as we do. And those of you who are listening on Spreaker, you can you'll see a new listening pod here in a minute. And those of you who are on the podcast, you'll just roll over to the next one. And the Ustream, you can keep watching if you're watching live, but if you're watching a recording, then you'll go to the next video as well. But when we come back, will you? I want to ask you a little bit more about the function of this within communities, if you're thinking about it as. And I want to ask you about the genre or the style, because it's different than some other kinds of music that church people are doing, and that seems like you're doing that on purpose. So, all right, so stick with us here. We'll be back. Doug Pagitt Radio, live from Seattle. This is where there's supposed to be like a crowd in the background, clap, all the Seattle crowd that gets all excited and everything.